we are live and chat is working. We're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So good morning. This is the April 22nd meeting of the Personnel and Human Services Committee of the Berrien County Board of Commissioners. My name is Bob Harrison. I serve as the chair. And today we've got a busy agenda. So I'll ask Shelley to please call the roll.
Commissioner Harrison.
Present via Zoom from Lincoln Township.
Commissioner Majerick.
Present via Zoom, Niles, Michigan.
Commissioner Bell.
Present via Zoom from Detroit, Michigan.
Whoa, wow. Is there snow over there, Ray?
No, there isn't.
Okay. Then
Mr.
we'll
Chair.
go right to our first item of business, our committee business. First item is the approval of our minutes from our April 8th meeting. I'm sure each of us have had a chance to review those. Any discussion about them?
No, I'd like to make a motion to pass those, please.
I second the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion to accept the minutes as presented. And we got a second. Shelley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Majerick.
Yes.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas.
Okay, very good. Our next item for discussion is appointments to the Board of Health. So we have 2 people, well, 1 person for the Board of Health to consider. This is a reappointment for Dwayne McBride. He's been on the board for a number of years. We've got his information. Any discussion from committee members regarding his reappointment? This would be for a term expiring in April 19th of 2026. Seems like a long time from now, but I know Dwayne personally, great guy, instructor at Andrews, and has been serving on the board for a number of years. Any discussion, committee members?
No, Mr. Chair, I think we should reappoint him. Looks like he's put in a number of years on the board, and I think he's been doing a great job.
Don't know if that was a motion, but I second that and we move forward.
Yes, that was a motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any issues
We
with?
don't, Mr. Chair. Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
ma'am.
we don't need a motion for this. We just need consensus.
There we go.
So thumbs up from all of us?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, good. Any issues with his attendance? I don't believe
None.
so with it. Okay,
None.
so we'll pass him on to the board later on today.
Yes.
Yes, okay. The next is reappointments to the Mental Health Authority. We've got a request from Randy Hearns and Nancy Johnson for reappointments. These would expire end of March of 2024. Any questions about their applications for reappointment for either Mr. Hearns or Ms. Johnson? Know them both. Both are great people, and I'm happy that they're asking to continue their service on the Riverwood Board.
I'm on the Riverwood Board, and they are both great assets to the board and the community. So I would like to also say yes for these 2.
Okay. Ray, your thoughts?
I haven't had the chance to meet any one of them, but from what we have here on paper, it looks like they're good, and I'll take Commissioner Barrett's word for how much of an asset they are. So yeah, I think we should reappoint them.
Okay. All right. I am in agreement. So we'll recommend them to the board later on today. Next, we've got a vacancy that we need to fill on the Riverwood Board. And we have 2 interested people, Dr. Eric Lester and then Ms. Marion Triplett. Both have submitted applications for a reappointment. Dr. Lester is a retired oncologist, and then Ms. Triplett is a licensed medical social worker and has previously served on the board. I don't know Mrs. Triplett at all. My thought might be to ask them to come in for an interview, and so we get a chance to talk to them and inquire about their reasons to wanting to serve on the Riverwood board. Thoughts, Mr. Bell or Mr. Majeri?
Yeah, I think that, you know, if we get them in for an interview, let them make a case for why they would be the best person to serve on the board. I think we will be able to narrow it down to who we want to appoint there.
Your thoughts, Mike?
I agree totally. We should do that. Yeah, last time we did this, I just said, hey, I like this applicant, and that's the one that was picked. I would like to see a more in-depth interview with them this time.
Okay. A question to you, Annette and Shelley. Now, are we the only ones to interview them for this appointment, or do we have to do members from each of the 3 committees? How do we do that?
So your policy states that the parent committee can make a recommendation to the full board to appoint somebody to a vacancy. If you choose not to do that, then it does go to a member of each of the committees will be picked to be an interview committee. So there'll be one of 3 people. Ms. Triplett was interviewed the last time, and she, as I had noted, was the actually second choice that was going to be picked from her previous service on there. That board's qualifications does have some specifics with regard to having a very diverse board, and the individual who's being replaced was a female.
Okay, so there's some criteria regarding professional qualifications and gender. Geographics are a factor or not?
I don't know about the geographics specifically, but that board has to have a makeup of a certain variety of things, but gender would be one of those, yes.
So would it be okay if we waited on this one till our next meeting and then looked at the criteria and then made a decision about the interviews? I give heartburn to anybody. Pardon?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, if you choose not to do a recommendation, then we'll have to have an interview committee would be established to do the interviews. It wouldn't necessarily be PHSC.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, why don't, everybody okay with that? So we wait on recommending, take a look at the criteria, look at what the current makeup is, and then and decide whether we want to recommend for one of them or bring together our interview committee and see what's on their minds. Okay,
I like that idea.
You okay with that, Mike?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right, well, let's plan on that then. I know that's more work for Annette, but that's okay. She's got that bouquet of flowers from Brian, so she's on an emotional high right now.
Yeah, I would just note that usually when a person's already been interviewed, and actually Mr. Lester's always also been interviewed because he sits on the planning commission and also sits on Parks and Recreation. So he's been interviewed in previous rounds with the commissioners as well. So
Good. Then should be go rather smoothly. Okay, so we're clear on our board appointment recommendations, and some of those will move on to the board later on today, and some will reconvene at our next meeting. All right, and then we've got Paul Gensha from Public Defender's Office coming to plead a case for doing something or other. So, okay, the floor is yours, Paul.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Brian asked me to brief you on the Public Defender's fiscal year 22 grant request, which I have submitted early. Admin and the full board approved me asking for the grant for next year. But there's some complement change aspects to the budget request. All of these items I reviewed I reviewed them with my regional manager from MIDC and had her support to ask the board for permission to ask MIDC, if that makes sense. And I'm happy to discuss as much or as little of that process as you'd like. The complement change aspects of the FY22 request are really two areas. Based upon a new standard that is required to be implemented, Standard 5. Up to now, since beginning of 2018, we've been dealing with Standards 1 through 4. Standard 5 is required by our office to be implemented October 1st, and that requires judicial independence. So the two areas that will be changed are, one, I'm asking the state to allow us 2 additional assistant public defenders to assist us with the front-end interviews of prospective clients. So currently, the Sheriff's Department and the court provide individuals who were recently arrested. First thing in the morning, these folks come into the jail and they are provided with some paperwork. It's relatively limited in detail that provides some financial background to the judge, who then approves or denies court-appointed counsel. Now, Standard 5 will require our office to conduct those interviews and make the appointment decision. It completely separates the court from the approval denial process for court-appointed counsel. It's going to be a pretty significant increase in time spent and really a need for additional staff to be over at the jail every morning or in Niles at our office to do these interviews. Our interviews typically now just discuss, hey, this is what the process is, this is what the judge is going to ask you, this is our advice, and this is what it looks like. We've never had to ask about financial information before. Standard 5 and the minimum indigency standard, they're very detailed about what aspects of the individual's financial picture we should be looking at. It's a very humanizing statute, meaning it looks at all aspects of their financial picture. It's not just, what's your income, what's your expenses. It looks at, true monthly expenses, who your dependents are, what your debts are, whether you receive any state assistance, things like that. And there's some presumptions that are worked into this. So it's relatively complicated. I've created an office policy to implement it and what our attorneys are going to be following to make these decisions. But it's going to require more people, to send over to interview these folks, because we need to get these things done in a pretty small time frame each day to make sure that we have the documents to the court in the time for the arraignments in the afternoon. So those are I'm requesting of MIDC 2 additional APD positions, entry-level positions. I submitted to them a number of time studies in support of this, that showing how many hours each day our staff spends on arraignments, and this certainly is going to perhaps double that requirement, would be my guess. So that's the attorney positions. MIDC has they've undertaken a really a massive study, and this is the second aspect of the complement change. In support of implementing a holistic model of defense, social workers being embedded with your public defender sort of attorney team. We have one social worker now, Denise Lane, who started with us in October. That was actually a reclassification of a position. We didn't ask for an additional position. That was a vacant legal assistant position that we reclassified as a social worker. It's been very successful. The idea behind the holistic model of defense is to represent not just the person and their charges and what the evidence is, but what are the barriers that this individual has to success? What can we do during this case to help them connect with local services so that perhaps and hopefully we don't see them again. We get them on a good pathway, connecting with local services so that many of those issues that lead to recidivism, hopefully we can address and get them, off that sort of that track. Additionally, our social workers help with sentencing mitigation, meaning they help us to provide more background information to a judge. So if a case is, if there's a conviction by plea or by jury, we need to present an argument to the judge as to what we think the sentence should be. And many times, if we can present our clients, a broader picture and a plan, we can mitigate what the circumstances, what the sentence could be. And that's a very important aspect of our job. So an additional aspect of the FY22 request was to request another social worker position. I had MIDC support to ask, and I have asked for that position. It would be, instead of a master's level position, a bachelor's level position. And it's slightly lower pay grade than the position we have, but it will allow us to represent a larger proportion of our clients following that model, following the holistic model, connecting a higher proportion of our clients with services, more information for sentencing mitigation. It's going to allow us to represent our clients more fully, a larger proportion of them. So that was the other position. 3 total positions that I've asked for in addition to what we have now, increasing our complement from 24 to 27. There is one other complement, I guess, modification request. So as part of the Standard 5, I anticipate that the responsibilities for these appointments and reviews of court-appointed counsel requests is going to be a pretty significant increase in work for the Chief Public Defender, Chief Assistant Public Defender, and our office manager. We're really going to be the central sort of repository for all of these documents that come in every day, and the office policies, proposed policy that I've drafted takes that into consideration. It's really I started making this request back last fall, just looking at over time, this office has gone from 8 employees and now potentially 27, plus 18 independent contractors. So myself and the office manager manage the independent contractors by ourselves. We don't have any other support within the office for that. But also the complement has just increased to the point where there's a lot more responsibility. The office manager is not just a supervisor of our legal assistants, but really is my right hand. Helps me with the grant application each year. Significant responsibilities for our quarterly reporting requirements to MIDC. And we've also had to increase, because MIDC is, as they get their feet under them, they've become more exacting in what they need of us. So we had to create some internal tracking systems to comply with the existing standards. So I started making this request a little earlier, but at this point, I've asked MIDC for it, and so I am asking your consideration at the appropriate time to change our office manager position to an office administrator. It's a relatively modest increase in salary. My concern, well, one is, right now the responsibilities of this position have drastically increased since the office opened because of what's required of us. And MIDC they've expanded the level of care that we need to show, the level of information that we need to submit, but also for the future. We've been very fortunate to have this particular individual that's in this position now, has a lot of experience, but if we needed to replace that person at some point, I have concerns about getting somebody qualified to help the Chief Public Defender and Chief Assistant. So I believe that the administrator grade would be more appropriate for what's asked of this position, and I would ask your consideration of that. Anything else about the FY22 request I'm happy to discuss, but those are the prospective changes to the complement.
Paul, a couple questions. Once your staff go in and do the screening with the people, with the clients, who makes the final decision? Does it go back to the judge, or do you guys make the decision independent of either the sheriff's department or the judge?
Good question. That will completely be our decision. The judicial officer is completely removed from that process.
Okay,
We
so
just-
you
we will
guys
just
will
be-
make a decision who you'll take on as clients versus the judge. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then what's the timing of approval by MIDC on your request? When does that take place?
Right. So the grant request, grant application is due April 27th. I've already submitted it. I submitted it early, and my regional manager said that that way they can review it and kick it back if we need to change or anything. So it has been submitted. They are due April 27th. I anticipate because we submitted it early, we should be on the calendar for the commission's review in June, probably mid-June, and the fiscal year would turn over October 1st. So the funding for all this additional positions would kick in October 1st, and I hope that answers that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to get a sense of, when they do it. So even though they might say, okay, this is approved from the MIDC, it still will not take effect till the new fiscal year, October 1.
Yes. And I guess it's important to note there's layers of protection for the county worked into this process. All of these positions are grant funded. If they're not, if MIDC for whatever reason, if the funds are not allocated, if MIDC doesn't approve them, they cannot be required of the county. The same goes for our lease space. We've worked in sort of out clauses in all of our leases and everything. So there's layers of protection, and certainly nobody's going to say that we wouldn't be asking for them if the state didn't fund them, if that makes sense.
Sure. I know that among some of the other board members, there's been anxiety about state level funding for the public defender offices, not just here, but statewide, and where that stands regarding the state budget and that. So there is, I think every time we talk about public defender, that somebody raises that issue and the concern that we would be forced to be put in, in between a difficult situation of retaining or laying off, a number of people. So that is verbalized on a regular basis.
Just some assurances there. We did receive from MIDC what the county's local share will be for FY22. It's actually gone down again. Went down last year, it's gone down again this year. So the county's financial responsibility for the Public Defender's Office for next year is $569,000. It's gone down about $5,000 from last year. As far as appropriations, I ask those questions every time when it comes up. I speak to my regional manager. Appropriations, as I understand it, has gone up another about 19 million, and they're anticipating about 150 million for the whole state, and they have not forecasted any concerns to me. So that's just encouraging news, is all that I've heard.
Yeah, the part of the news that's not encouraging is the fight between the governor and the legislature. So what I'm hearing is that we might not have a state budget until the end of September. And so that is troubling I think to everybody. Ray or Mike, questions of Paul?
I guess one of the questions is all these changes in the budget, your budget that's been set up?
Yes, sir. The request. So it's the grant application. Basically what MIDC requires is, hey, these are the standards that you're going to be required to follow or to meet. Please submit to us a grant application that lays out how you're going to meet them and what you anticipate the cost to be. So this is all included in what I've asked MIDC for, and I had all of these things were initially reviewed at the staff level by MIDC, by my regional manager. The grant manager had their support. Obviously, the commission is who would approve them. But yes, all of these changes are included in what we've asked for.
Okay, Ray, any questions?
Yes, I have one. So when you said that you wanted to, you requested that the position be changed from, I think you said a manager position to more of a assistant. Could you repeat again? What are all the changes there as far as responsibilities in the office?
Yes, sir. So the requested change would be from it's a grade level change from a manager to an administrator. One, it would put us on equal footing with the prosecutor's office. They do have this position. As far as the specific changes, I began asking for it last fall because of just each year more is asked of us. As far as with standard 5 coming in, it's going to be a pretty drastic increase. It's just another example of how MIDC kind of every year they ramp up what they ask of us. As far as the specifics, I did provide to Ms. Jasper a job description, sort of a proposed job description that has highlighted the changes from manager to administrator. I'd be happy to go through any of that. As far as broadly speaking, a lot of it has to do with the internal tracking and reporting requirements that have been newly required of us since 2018. So every year they're like, well, when you're going to comply with standard 1, that's not good enough now. We need you to track it on the front end. We need you to, have back end tracking and a system for what's going to happen if a person doesn't comply with it. So most of them are internal tracking requirements, increase in reporting requirements quarterly, things that generally would fall on me. I spend a lot of time supervising our attorneys, so I do need a lot of help with the grant process. A lot of it is just internal compliance with standards and reporting requirements. If you'd like more specifics, I can go through the job description as well.
No, that answer suffice. I can go through, if I have more questions, go through the specifics, but thank you for that clarification.
Of course.
So, Mr. Administrator, who is the parent committee for public defenders? Who's that?
So Paul reports to the admin committee. Admin reviewed this at last week's meeting, and there was general discussion about advancing the grant the grant request to the state of Michigan. That was blessed by admin, but it was blessed with the contingency that PHS sign off on any changes to current staff or any additions for future staff. My advice on this is let's wait and see what the state of Michigan says. And if there's a general agreement, then we would bring it back to PHS for further discussion.
Okay, that seems reasonable to me. Wait and see what the state decides. Hopefully they'll hit their timelines in June, to be effective October 1. So, committee members, you okay with that? So we recognize it, and we don't see anything that troubles us. So assuming that MIDC says yes, then we'll reconsider it at our later meeting. So hopefully sometime in July, late June, July, something like that. Is that okay, Paul?
Yes, sir. Of course. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Interesting stuff. That a lot of changes going on in the public defenders arena. Okay, so then we're ready to move on to the resolution regarding the health department. And that is, I think in my recollection, this is just our standard resolution where the state's pushing more money out to them and we say, yes, we'll take the money.
That is correct.
Do we need a motion to accept? Yeah, no?
No, just consensus again to move it to the board for action.
Okay, thumbs up, everybody.
Take the money.
Okay, thumbs up, you got it.
Yeah, the date was changed because of the deadline to accept the money. That's the reason why we have to try to go all the way through the full board today, just in case there's any question.
Okay. All right, anything else we need to cover, administrators? No? Okay, Annette, make sure you water the flowers, and then we'll be reconvening back here.
Public,
Hang on.
public comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't forget that. All right, Annette, you're checking for us.
Okay, I think you're good.
Okay, well then, thank you all. Good meeting, and then we'll see everyone at 10:30. All right, thank you all.